وفاء العبيدات. You're listening to the Women Power Podcast, a subsidiary platform to the Women Power Summit, the largest event in MENA, with the aim of empowering women and helping them achieve their absolute highest potential. Each week on the Women Power Podcast, you will hear honest, vulnerable, authentic, real conversations from inspiring women. These women will share their experiences and stories into what it takes to build a successful business and career. The podcast will share insight and inspiration and hopefully inspire action and lead change. Fouz Al Sabah is the founder and managing director of Crowd Creative House, a Kuwaiti-based multi-disciplinary agency and consultancy that specializes in producing creative projects and cultural initiatives that empower the local creative industry. Fouz is also the founder and editor-in-chief of Khaleejesque, an award-winning media brand that explores the Arab Gulf's creative and cultural scene from a content perspective and through community events. In 2019, Fouz won the National Entrepreneurial Award at the British Council's Alumni Awards. Welcome, Fouz. How have you been during this very strange time with COVID? Have you enjoyed it or have you hated it?
I mean, with anything in the world, I try to see the positive aspect of every single situation. And given that, COVID happened overnight and we were in such a strict lockdown here in Kuwait, we literally couldn't leave the house for, a good couple of weeks. I try to take advantage of this time. As you know, I've been reading nonstop and, it just accelerated during this time. And even during home arrest, I would like to call it for a lack of a better word, I try to look at different activities, working from home, started learning how to do websites. I tried, dabbling into learning piano. So I've been trying to keep myself very busy just so that I can stay sane.
Have you learned anything new during this time about yourself?
Definitely. Prior to the lockdown, I was like going from meeting to meeting. All my days were super busy, and I really wanted to work on certain skills. So definitely learning how to make my own website. Like I created my own website, learned like in 2 days, launched it. I was super happy with that. And it really gave me kind of a focused time, like no disturbances. Stole my brother's piano, took a couple of online classes, bought a book, started teaching myself how to kind of play piano. I'm nowhere near, an amateur yet, but I'm still learning, and that's the intention. So I'm sticking with that and seeing how it goes.
I wanted to ask about Khaleejesque and Fouz before Khaleejesque. So you are known as the kind of editor-in-chief or the founder of this publication and this platform. But before Khaleejesque, what were you up to?
I would say work-wise, I in middle school, high school, university, I was always working. I was a student worker. I was in the student council. So keeping myself pretty busy. So I would say that was very important experience for me. So after graduating university and then doing my master's, and obviously starting Khaleejesque was right in between, before starting my master's and directly after graduating university. And that to me was a huge turning point in my career, basically saying, do I want to take this step? Do I want to take the risk of starting, this project? Back then it wasn't a company. It was a project. And then basically asking myself, do I have the courage enough to take the step, and then following through, seeing where it will take me, knowing that I didn't have, the traditional job, but I had the experience. I didn't go into a job straight after university and get that experience there. But I felt, like a gut instinct saying, you've tried and tested yourself throughout the years, right from middle school and high school and university. You can handle the responsibility, so go ahead. And that's how Khaleejesque started, with that intention of telling myself, convincing myself that you can take the step. Because graduating from university, the last thing I wanted to do was, start a company. I started a project, which eventually happened to become a company and grow organically. And a decade later, looking back at it, I was so grateful.
Where does your work ethic come from? You said that you've always been a worker. You sound really active in school, in university. It seems to me like you want to be productive and you want to achieve things. Where did that come from?
I guess just to give you a background, I started, school in a British curriculum, and then right across, in middle school, switched to an American school, so American curriculum. I would say the discipline came from the British kind of academic side, and then the more analytic, creative thinking, the strategy came from the American side. So that really, set the stage for me, set the foundation of saying, okay, you can put your head down, do the work, but also be creative. So that's one side of it. So definitely the education, studying in private school, and that really, I would give a lot of credit to that. Now, from the family side, thankfully, my parents were very open when it came to supporting, or promoting creativity. My grandfather, Allah yarhamah, I remember when I was a child, would import all of these old movies. So from the 80s, 90s, I was brought up in that environment. So film, books, he would bring in books, he would share books, music, arcade, video games. So I was always in that environment, open to all of this content and all of that creativity. And when it came to work ethic, my mom is a lawyer. Seeing her, raise the kids and then go back to work right after, mashallah, she gave birth to the youngest child, Mubarak, after 6 children, she went back to the office. So I really look up to her. And that was the driving force, all of these different elements.
What is it like growing up with such a big family? Where do you fit in? Are you a middle child? Are you the first? How did it work with a big family?
I would say it still is an amazing experience having 5 siblings. I'm the third, so second daughter, third child. And every single one of us has a different personality. And we are, I would say, kids at heart. And that really, drives what I do. And they are my biggest supporters. And they are people that I, enjoy sitting down with and going out with and traveling with. Not because I'm forced to. But it really is a unique experience. These are, people that you can talk to. They will give you honest feedback. They will not, be hesitant to give it to you straight. Any issues you're facing, emotional, mental, you can sit down with and have a raw conversation with. I mean, sometimes we do butt heads. That's normal. But more than anything else, it's great to have that sense of, okay, these are people that have my best interest and have got my back. Thankfully, every single person has a different character, so we're never bored. You can keep us, in the same place for days and weeks on end, and we will, keep on entertaining ourselves. So that's always a great relief. And yeah, I mean, it's they've been with me throughout the journey, the Khaleejesque journey, and I've relied on them heavily, and they probably wouldn't say that, but whenever I'm frustrated, whenever I have issues, they would, I would just talk it out with them. They would give me different perspectives. So it's great to have, a handful of siblings.
When you started Khaleejesque, I don't know if you understood the magnitude of what you were building, because there were very few digital, both offline and online content coming out from this part of the world by Khaliji people that were writing our stories. So there were a couple of publications. I remember Elif was a beautiful publication, but it had an expat team, and it also wasn't consistent. I think it stopped after a while. There was Brown Book as well, which was interesting. But I mean, Khaleejesque, I feel, had a very unique voice. It was very close to all our hearts. Were you trying to fill a gap in the market? Where did the idea come from? What problem were you trying to solve?
So back in university, so we're talking between 2004 and 2008. Nofa, my cousin, and I were, avid bloggers. We would blog about kind of mundane topics and just to write. We used to write. We loved writing. And then we decided to, I would say in 2008, to actually use our skills to write about things that people didn't write about. I mean, there were a lot of bloggers talking about what was happening in Kuwait, the cultural scene, local openings, events, whatnot. And we decided that why not look abroad, look at our neighboring countries. Now, this was pre-Instagram. I keep on telling people, if you could imagine such a thing. Twitter was just getting started, and people didn't really know what was happening. So that was I would say the starting point. Okay, we want to focus on Kuwait and the GCC because, we're so close to each other, but we have no idea what was happening. And we intentionally wanted to focus on the creative scene because that was something that was very close to our hearts. And essentially no one was covering. So they were either covering politics or finance. Everything else was, an afterthought. So we really thought that this was a gap that needed to be filled as a project. This wasn't a company and a business, revenue generating. That was the last thing on our minds. We wanted to start, gather a team of writers, photographers, contributors, and see where it went. And that's what we did in 2009. So March was when we had the first meeting, decided what we were going to do, recruited all of these contributors all across the GCC. And 3 months later, we launched on the 1st of June, 2009. And that was the same time that I was accepted to at King's College in London. So that was a huge turning point for me.
Why was that a huge turning point for you?
Because I did apply, but I didn't know if I was going to be accepted or not. That's why I was like, okay, I'll just go ahead and do the platform and see what happens. Little did I know that I would be getting, the letter in the mail saying, congratulations, you're accepted to King's College in London, and you're going to start in September.
What did you study in King's College?
I did my master's in cultural and creative industries. Again, that was something that no one even knew anything about, myself included. But because I really wanted to study in depth the creative aspect of businesses and how they operate. And I come from a business background. So I studied finance and marketing in university and always had that creative itch. No, I want to understand creative businesses. I want to understand how they operate, how they develop, how they're sustainable. So that was the perfect program.
How did you initially fund to pay for all the writers? And did you get an office to begin with? Or was everybody working remotely even back then? Did you have savings or did you ask for funds from family and friends? How did you initially give it that initial push?
So initially in 2009, we started as a project. So it was, the budget was a very minimal budget. Like I did the logo, I did the website. We pitched in with a very modest budget to give to contributors. So that was how we started. Now, keep in mind that this wasn't a business that we wanted to create. This was just a project that we wanted to initiate and see where it would go. Now, after graduating King's College, going back to Kuwait and saying, okay, what are we going to do with Khaleejesque? That was when we consciously decided to, establish it as a company in 2011. And that's when we sat down and thought about the financials, in depth, seeing kind of how the revenue would be like and what would the team be. So that there's a distinction between, I would say, that the start of Khaleejesque as a concept, as a project, and the start of Khaleejesque as a company, which happened in 2011.
Was it initially income generating, or did that take some time?
It definitely took some time. It wasn't something that was profitable within the first 2 or 3 years, because we were just starting out. We were not your traditional media platform. We weren't a fashion magazine. We weren't a news platform. So people, especially advertisers, would say, "You've just started. How do I know you're going to continue? You're going to survive the next year?" So I would say that was the hardest thing that we had to do, was to establish our credibility, establish that, we have a specific voice and a specific audience, which not a lot of advertisers wanted. The culture, creative community, no thank you. If you are focusing on fashion, come back to us. And that really solidified our position. Are we going to sell out? Are we going to go commercial? Or are we, going to stick to our guns and see how it goes? And I think it paid off. But if you were to ask me back then, I wouldn't know if that was going to pay off, because all of the money, all of the advertising money was going to commercial magazines, people that would churn out international news, celebrity news, and all of that. So for the first 2-3 years, we were, just hunkering down, building our brand, making sure that we were consistent. We were trying to reach out to all of the advertisers, telling them more about us, and looking at ways of how we can work together. We weren't thinking of, we're just going to dismiss them. We had to always try to be flexible, but not lose the brand. So that was kind of a leeway for us, but it really took a lot of time.
Fouz, I feel like we had very similar trajectories. I had a digital publication and a print publication for the longest time, and it was very frustrating because I, like you, was very passionate about the creative scene generally, wherever I went. And no matter who I spoke to, nobody could comprehend the value of investing in culture, art, and design. People couldn't make that connection. Now looking back, I don't necessarily blame them, because we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have a design industry in this part of the world. We have galleries and maybe a minister of culture or ministry of culture. We have maybe a regulatory authority that does events, takes care of our local museums. But it's not necessarily like the thriving scene in European cities, which we were used to experiencing. So there was simply no funds, and anyone who did have the funds wanted to reach a much more general audience, not a niche audience. So for me, I just remember I just got really burnt out towards the end, because I was trying to support with the content creation. We were trying to put out publications at certain times, and I was trying to do the advertising, and I had the ad pack and I had all the marketing stuff that you needed, but nobody would bite. So eventually I just pivoted. So you said it took us a while to start creating revenue. So one, did you get frustrated in this period between starting up and trying to build a business with advertisers and revenue model? And how did you process that frustration, if you were frustrated?
Frustration is always there, has always been there. But I feel that it's a driving force to force you to act creatively, to use that energy in a different way. So how we've addressed that was by creating Crowd Creative House. So in 2014, we decided to focus on creating a platform where clients can come and work with us, whether it's for services such as branding, photography, editorial content, publishing, distribution. So the set of skills that we have for Khaleejesque, we've used to service clients. Now, that was a saving grace, because we had clients that would pay us on time, and we use that funds to run the show, keep the lights on, so to say. Now, that also gave us the freedom to be independent with Khaleejesque. We didn't have to worry about, will advertisers advertise? Will they dictate what we publish and how we publish? To me, that was the best decision that we ever made, because that gave us the flexibility of changing Khaleejesque, and we've pivoted countless times. So Crowd Creative House became the engine for Khaleejesque.
You initially wanted to create content. You wanted to build a business based on publishing content, cool content, and support the creative scene. You pivoted into having a boutique agency consulting space that serves the customer or serves a client. When you are working in Crowd Creative House, does that give you energy or does it drain you? And I'm asking you because sometimes we pivot because there is an opportunity, but it's not necessarily what we chose. I didn't choose to want to do Crowd Creative House. I did it because there was a need. It made sense. We have a great team, and I can shift it in that area. But are you like, oh, this aligns with my purpose?
That's an excellent question. When we started Crowd Creative House, it was to, address a need, because people were approaching us as Khaleejesque saying, I love what you do. I love the photo shoot that you did. I want you to do the same for my brand. Or I love, the style of writing. I want a similar editorial content. So we were getting approached, but as Khaleejesque, we didn't really offer those services because we were a publication. So that's why we decided to launch Crowd Creative House. As we grew, we started getting approached by companies and brands wanting publications. So at that time, it made financial sense. It was a huge opportunity. At one time, we were churning out or managing 4 publications. The team was growing. Everything was very stressful, frantic. But, working in publishing, that's very natural. But if you would ask me, that I would say that was a very fateful decision, because that essentially wasn't what I wanted to do. It was too stressful, and creating content for 4 publications at one time, I can't even remember. It's like I have amnesia because it was such a stressful time. The content that we were creating wasn't meaningful. At the end of the day, even if it was for a client, as a core team, we wanted to create meaningful content. So for the longest time, I think it was between 2014 to 2017, we were at our wits' end. We were getting a lot of interest, a lot of new clients, knocking our doors. And I just got to a point where I said, you know what? It was a great experience, but I don't think this is what we want to do. Because A, it was taking a lot of our time and energy, and B, it wasn't something that was fulfilling us as a team. And we actually shrunk. The team shrunk, the amount of clients that we would take shrunk. The type of client has been something that we hold in high regard. Who do we want to work with? What type of work do you want to create?
So when you say you shrunk, can you give me an idea of how many you were at your peak, and then what was that sweet spot for you where this is actually the perfect size for us?
At the beginning, when we first started Khaleejesque, we were a core of 5 full-time, but we had countless number of freelancers. So we never felt like we were a small team. We, at one point had a network of 60 to 70 freelancers. that we would work with. As the core team started growing, at our highest we were around 15. So 15 full-time working on these publications, distribution, advertising, other than the freelancers. So to me, that was very overwhelming because, 2015 is when my co-founder left, and, I was there all alone and had to handle, a growing team, growing clients. So when we started to, go back and realize that, okay, this is what we wanted to do. And we had, as a team, I had to consciously decide that, okay, this is not sustainable. We're not going to go down this road. We are now 4 full-time, and we still have a large number of freelancers that we work with, people that have been around for the past 8-10 years, and constantly new people joining the team. I wouldn't say it gets lonely because, people are, the team is demotivated because we are constantly working with other people in any given project, whether it's a publication, whether it's a one-off project. We've got around 10 to 15 people that we're working remotely with. So I would say we're at a very sweet spot, alhamdulillah. So it's good to get there.
So you were with your partner since the very beginning. So what was the reason for this departure, and how did it make you feel to be like, I'm alone now? What do I do? I was with someone the whole time. Because can I tell you something? Partnerships are hard. I had a team member with me for the longest time. She was actually my team member number 1. And after 5 years, I made her a partner. And then she, it didn't work out. It was her first job with me. So she ended up leaving and also traveling. She wanted to go with her boyfriend to be able to have that flexibility to move around with him to different parts of the GCC. It was hard to have her go. I felt really alone, and I felt like because there was someone there, I was doing the parts I enjoyed and she was doing maybe the parts I didn't enjoy. So when she left, I had to do everything, and I was very resentful. After she left, I wasn't resentful towards her, but I was like, God damn, I thought I was finally getting somewhere, and now I'm back in square one. I'm back to doing everything. And generally, I find that it's very hard. The narrative to me is men usually have a lot of partners. I could be generalizing. They're good with partners, 2 or 3 partners. They have it together. And with women, there's a lot of breakups, when it comes to business partnerships. So I'd love to just kind of tap into your experience. She is your cousin. I'm sure you were close friends, but what was the reason and how did you feel about it? And then how did that affect your work?
So essentially, it was something that happened gradually. We started obviously in 2009, and then 2010 she got married. And then, plans of a family, first kid, second kid. And then it just got to a point where I have too much on my plate. I can't handle this. And it just happened. We started drifting apart, and then that's when, the responsibilities or the business separation happened, or the partnership separation happened. I would say there isn't any resentment from my part. It's just something that she took that decision. I respect her. I would have liked to have other partners to depend on, especially, knowing that in 2015, especially the time where we were getting a lot of clients, a lot of work, being, I would say, stranded. I had a team, but being, a founder, all that responsibility, on your shoulders is scary. It was scary. It was just knowing that you had a partner there in and of itself was a safety net, was comforting. So when I felt that, okay, I'm alone now, what am I going to do? I really just took that time to kind of be a cheerleader to myself and say, okay, you don't know what's going to happen next. There's no point in worrying, stressing yourself. Take each day as it comes and just, do what's best for you personally, because it was stressing me out, honestly. And do what's best for you personally and for the team. Alhamdulillah, as you mentioned, like I took a bulk of the work on. I tried to streamline and automate as much as I could. I tried to bring in different systems, online stuff that can make my life easier. Thankfully, it was a great investment, because till this day, we're still a small team, but because I've done all of the hard work early on, it's made, my life so much easier.
Did you go through the cycle of any breakup, shock, anger, sadness, acceptance, bargaining, acceptance, and then finally you were like, okay, fine, I'm just going to get on with it and try to figure it out?
I was in denial for the longest time. I would say that, because it didn't happen abruptly. It happened very gradually, that distancing. And I was like, is this happening? Is this not happening? It's like, are these red flags? Should I anticipate? And I was in denial for the longest time. And I feel like it would have been much more effective if I would have said, okay, these are red flags, be ready, anticipate what's happening. But it dragged along, and when it actually happened, and I was, in grief, I was like mourning, because it was our baby, and we worked on it, and after countless years, and you're like, what's happening? What's going to happen? And I was like, can I do this alone? Should I look for another partner? And definitely that cycle was something that I went through.
Can you tell me a bit more about your hard conversations? Maybe not just with your partner, but with other team members as well. Because also working in a magazine, generally, like this is all over, like this part of even in Bahrain, magazines have such small budgets, so they hire such young team members. So there's a lot of turnover for editors and writers. They do it for a year and then they leave, and they want to get a higher pay. They want less time. I think like working in publishing is exciting in the beginning, not necessarily later. So my question is, how do you deal with those hard conversations with people who want to exit?
Hard conversations definitely were hard in the beginning. At the very first, employee wanting to leave, the first employee that was unhappy, I agree. You would take it, I would take it personally. Like, I failed, what did I do? And as you mentioned, working in the publishing industry may seem very glamorous at the very first start. And because we aren't, especially in Kuwait, we don't have people that graduate as journalists. We don't have people that have the background of, studying publishing, working in publishing. They are very disillusioned. And we're very detail-oriented, and it's very stressful. So there was a high turnover of people coming in, going out. So the first couple of times was very difficult. It was very heavy. But now hard conversations are so easy. I don't like to say that they're easy, meaning that there aren't any feelings. By all means, I love my team. I love people that I work with. I love, having that relationship with them. But I have come to an understanding where this is, a person that sees that they are not fit for this role, and that's their experience. So don't feel the burden of that experience. Bilaks, I wish them well, still support them. If I see any opportunity that, might fit them, recommend them. So I feel that so many people come with their own aspirations and their dreams and wishes and hopes, and this is temporary at the end of the day. Nothing is permanent. So if they feel that they are not happy or they don't feel fulfilled, by all means, this is their experience, and I want them to be happy and fulfilled, whether they're here or anywhere else. And I always make sure that whether it's someone leaving or someone that's unhappy, to talk to them as if they were, a friend, not an employee. And I really genuinely wish them the best, even if I'm so attached to them and love them and want them to still be at the company. I've gotten to a place where, don't feel attached. Only wish that they are at a place where they're happy and fulfilled, whether they're with you or they're not.
How long did it take you to get to that place?
Definitely a couple of years. It didn't come easily. It didn't come easily because I was going through it a lot of times. Like, as you mentioned, there's a high turnover. And then I was like, you know what? Don't get attached. You might feel that it's personal, but don't get attached. This has nothing to do with you. Why did you ever feel that? Why have that burden? Why would you feel that responsibility? It's their experience. It's their decision. It's as long as you're confident in yourself and how you're running the business. And if there are any issues, listen to them. Take that observation in. Try to develop yourself, but at the end of the day, it's their decision. They want the best for themselves, and it took a couple of years to get there. It wasn't easy.
I know you wish them well, and I know you're at the stage where you've been doing this for such a long time that you're confident and secure in your own skin. But when you see a former team member and they they avoid you because you were their boss, I don't know if you've had the situation. How do you feel?
I don't think I had the experience where I saw someone and they avoided me. Maybe they did and I didn't notice. I don't know. But most of the people, I see them in social events or whatnot, very cordial, like, hi, how's it going? What are you up to? There are some, former employees that we, collaborate with, that we hire. So to me, that's I would say probably most of them, we are still in touch with as a team, and I keep on telling them, keep us updated, keep us in the loop in what you're doing. Most of them either joined other companies or other studios, or are freelancers now, or are doing their own thing. So I feel like, okay, they were working with us at a certain point in time, but that doesn't discount their skill and their efforts, and the role may shift. You would be working with them in a different capacity. So I feel like, especially in our sector, in the creative sector, it is number one to be supportive, regardless if they're working, within the same organization or if not. It's super, super important to be present, be there, using the energy and effort to build people up, because especially going through and either working with or featuring or hiring full-time or part-time or freelancers, I see that so many people are in a silo and they're very isolated, and that is something that I'm not happy with. I want to see people working together, cheering each other on. And when I do see people that I've worked with, even if they were in the company, I know that they are trying to fulfill themselves, and I want to be there for them in any capacity. If they want to say hi to me, they can say hi to me. If they want to avoid me, that's fine. I'm okay with it.
Other than your partner, was there an exit from a team member? And you don't have to mention the name if you don't want to.
I mean, definitely the managing editors. Like, when they leave, we've had 3 managing editors leave. So that, the bulk of the work was on the managing editor's shoulders. So that definitely was a huge blow when a managing editor just decides to, hey, I'd like to resign, and then you're left with a huge hole and you don't know how you're going to fill it, because not everyone can fill that responsibility, and you need someone that has the editorial background and even the social capability of connecting with people, delegating, managing a team. So that was definitely a drastic change. But at the end of the day, I feel with every single new managing editor that would come, it would change the direction of Khaleejesque, and that flexibility probably shaped it into what it is today. Alhamdulillah, Malak Al-Swayhil, our current managing editor, really changed the direction of Khaleejesque from, a magazine into a journal. We are creating deep dive articles and research that is, I feel, something that I've always wanted to aspire to. So seeing, the previous editors leaving definitely was, very, very emotional, but it happened for a reason. So I always, always, always keep in mind that change, is inevitable, and change can bring you to a new, environment or new dimension that you never thought of getting to.
I love that. I have to tell you, I sighed a bit when you said that, like a sigh of relief, because it was nice. I love that. And I think I want to remember that and use that and just have it stick, because this idea that people come into our lives and they can help elevate our companies versus this idea of, damn it, how am I going to replicate that person? But versus actually I might bring somebody who will give me a whole new different set of skills or who will take this company to a different direction is awesome. I want to touch on the K-Store and Il-Box. First of all, just correct me if I'm wrong. Are they both still around, or were they just concepts that were tested, experimented?
Yeah, just to give you a short background about Il-Box. Il-Box was basically a subscription box service that we launched in 2015. And to this date, it's probably one of the funnest projects that we've ever worked on. And what we wanted to do was direct market designers from the Middle East and get their products to our readers. So every single issue that we would produce, back then we would produce every 2 months, we would have a publication. We would curate. We would get 5 to 6 design items from Middle Eastern designers related to the theme of the issue, which was very challenging, put them in this box and then ship them out to subscribers. We had around, because of the limitations of production, we had 50 boxes every single issue, and it did really well. Surprisingly, most of our subscribers were in the GCC, not in Kuwait. We even had a subscriber in Canada. It was such a wonderful experience showcasing these products, having people feel them, touch them, use them. And we would always call the designers back after, shipping the box and ask them, did you see an uptick in sales? Did you see increase in interest? And the majority would say yes. One designer even said that they had 300% increase in sales after sending out the boxes. We did a total of 12 boxes. That was like 600 boxes shipped. Collaborated with 60 plus designers. Some of them we would collaborate with and customize. So 3D printed candles, camel soap. So it was such a wonderful experience. We wanted to develop it, but there were 2 main challenges. The first challenge was the limitation of production. Since there were designers, artisans, small studios, they wouldn't have the capabilities of doing larger runs. Obviously, if we wanted to be sustainable, we were looking at 200 to 300 items, which wasn't feasible. Number 2 was the logistics. Dealing with the shipping companies was a nightmare. I still look back at it and wonder, how did we even manage? So unfortunately, we had to, just stop that concept, but it was always in the back of our minds. So right now, we actually just launched this yesterday, and we've reimagined Il-Box to be an experimental digital pop-up space. We're going to be launching our new concept next week, still maintaining the same values of working with designers, collaborating with them, producing products, And basically now, an added value is having a social impact. So this is how we've reimagined Dilbox. It's still there. Subscription box service has stopped for now, although I wish to bring it back one day. And the K-Store is basically an extension of Khaleejesque, where we collaborate with designers. Obviously, we sell our publication, but we also collaborate with designers in creating exclusive items. The latest products that we had were posters that we commissioned designers from the GCC to create to accompany an exhibition that we had. It was amazing that during the first night, the opening of the exhibit, 2 designers completely sold out their designs. So it's a space for us, obviously, to experiment and come up with items that obviously, benefit the designers as a revenue, when it comes to revenue, and benefit Khaleejesque. So I would say Ilbox and the K-Store basically are revenue streams for Khaleejesque.
I love that you are continuing to use Khaleejesque as a lab, a creative lab, to launch different initiatives, pop-ups. As I'm getting older, Fouz, I feel like I'm all about automation. Like, I love automating things. And I've tried multiple ways to create subscription-based or to create recurring revenue. So we started our own brands. It hasn't worked for me. I never felt passionate about them, but I think they were very disconnected from the things that we loved as well. So does it ever get hard to reimagine things? Like, now you said we're taking this idea of Ilbox, we're creating the digital version of it. Do you ever get exhausted? Like, I just want to focus on one thing.
I come up with ideas all the time. I drive my team crazy. If they were to hear you, they would probably tell you, we wish Fouz can stick to one concept. I don't know. I just have that inclination of just thinking, like, all across the board. And I keep on telling the team, the sillier the idea, the more outrageous it is, the more I'm interested in it. I mean, definitely getting, the creative juices running is something that I'm always, worried about. I don't like to stay stagnant, especially when it comes to this industry, working with a very dynamic industry. It's always important to see how can we reimagine, how can we do things differently. Automation is great, and we've got that down when it comes to the publication. So the flat plan, the content coming in, and all of that. That's something that we've mastered, alhamdulillah. So there are no issues with that. But when it comes to, I would say, complementary activities or initiatives, I feel that we are at a point where we're flexible enough to experiment, see what works well, see what doesn't, cancel that, focus on that. And that is something that we've done with Kilmatain, series of talks, and now it's developed into a creative forum that we had in January 2020. So it worked well the first season. We developed it the second season, the third season, it became a creative forum with countless, people coming in for panels and workshops. And we had, great partners and sponsors. So I'm all about experimenting. I'm all for it. And you do your research, you do your homework. But I always like to, bring in a little bit of, I would say, magic. Like, what would make it different? How can we do something different, differently? What seems like a great idea but would never work? How can we make it work? Similar to the subscription box service. At first, everyone's like, that's never going to work. Let's not even try to. So, I mean, if you experiment, if you see that it does work, and go with it. That's kind of my motto when it comes to Khaleejesque. I didn't even know what was going to happen with it. I just started and ran with it. It grew organically, alhamdulillah. I was very flexible with it. I didn't, decide, okay, it's my way or the highway. And that is kind of the thread among all of the projects that I'm a part of, whether it's for Khaleejesque, whether it's for Crowd, working with clients. Start something, go with it, see if it works. What doesn't work, can you fix it? Fix it. If you can't fix it, okay, don't get attached to it. And it's been working, and I think it's very important to still have that ability, that flexibility of thinking creatively, removing yourself from the routine. Because I got to a point where I was happy with the routine. I felt very stable. And then I felt like, no, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And I always have that motto in my mind. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. If it's getting too comfortable, you need to be afraid.
The media industry is so fast and it's changing so much. Every day there is a new tech platform. There are websites that now get, they design for you. You can, get people to bid for projects. It's becoming more and more tech focused, I feel. We spend 4 to 8 hours a day of our time online on Instagram, especially this part of the world. So it's changing how people are consuming media. They no longer maybe want to read articles. They don't want to pick up a physical copy. I had an interview with Noor Tahini from the Goodness podcast, and she said, we no longer want to run content on a website with text. No one reads them. So I'm shifting to audio interviews on Instagram. Like, those are our articles. How are you keeping up with the times? And does it get overwhelming?
It does get overwhelming because, as you mentioned, things are changing so quickly. You never know, what's going to be trending next, what people are going to be relying on. Is it video content? Is it podcasts? What's the next thing? I feel the platform is arbitrary in our situation, and the content is number one. I mentioned before that we're placing ourselves as a journal more than a website at this point, and the content that we're creating is more research-based, that our audience is now more of the creative professional, creative researcher, more than it would be, a general lifestyle magazine reader. We get approached by students, researchers, professionals, teachers, professors, using our content. And when it comes to our line of work, especially now that I've shifted to consultancy work, the content and the research that we do very, very organically shifts into what I'm doing and the expertise that I have and kind of the input or insight that I've been sharing. So that is where I see Khaleejesque shifting. And it is something that we've very consciously decided to do because we've seen a lot of websites launch and then disappear. And that is something that I've been doing since the very start of Khaleejesque, having an Excel sheet of every single person, brand, company that we've created, listing them down. And from time to time, I go back to the Excel sheet and I look at, just very, very briefly review the names and the brands and the companies, and most of them aren't there anymore. They're not functioning anymore. So I do agree, it's very important to be flexible and pivot and look at what's out there and how you can kind of fill a gap in the market. But it's also important to diversify, A, because we're doing so many different things, and B, stick to what you're strong at. Our content is, again, more research-based, and we really, really, really focus on creating high-quality, research, valuable content. And that is why people keep on coming back to us, and they keep on telling us, you're consistent, you have been, you've proved that, we can trust you. And that's why a lot of people get in touch with us. Either they want us to feature them or they want to work with us. And I would say they trust us. And that to me is very important above all, that we have that, trust with whether it's with our readers or people that we feature. And I feel that we have that in mind. We are conscious about how the media is changing, and we always think about, do we want to do a podcast? If we were to do a podcast, how would it be different? So these questions are always in our mind, but we don't want to do something that would not be of use. So we're thinking about it, but want to take baby steps before diving in.
What is your big, hairy, audacious goal? What is the big plan?
I mean, the main goal has always been to highlight the creative and cultural community, the people on the ground working and trying to connect them, highlight them, empower them, create opportunities for them. That is through Khaleejesque and Crowd Creative House. Now I'm more conscious about the type of work that I'm doing. I'm always, the number one goal is to create meaningful work for my community, work that has a social impact. So through Khaleejesque and through Crowd Creative House, I've, alhamdulillah, created a network, built relationships, have, quite a lot of input, especially with my background in the cultural and creative industries. I have the know-how. I understand the industry more, especially through the experience. And now the creative economy is such a hot word. In the GCC, all the governments want to, have that on their agenda, national agenda. And I'm like, okay, it took you a decade, but great, it's okay. Like I've studied that, I've done that, and a decade later, people are actually understanding what it is and the importance of that. And I've been working with the government here, the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters, on their first national creative economy strategy. It's been 3 years in the making, just like to convince them, and it's a consortium of different organizations in international consultancy and people on the ground here. But that to me is my, I would say, lifelong dream of creating an impact on the local community here in Kuwait, because I've been working in the industry for the past 10 years, for a decade, and I've seen the weaknesses, and I've seen the lack of opportunities, and I've seen that we have the raw talent, but as something that's systemic, something that is more, I would say, fundamentally has a great foundation and structure, we're not there yet. There are other, governments that have done a great, and, there's a huge efforts and great strategies, and they've executed and built on in a span of 1 to 2 years. We're still not there yet. So that to me is a lifelong dream, and alhamdulillah, I'm in the space where I can build that, and this is something that I wouldn't have reached if I didn't build Khaleejesque or Crowd Creative House. So I'm all about starting something and working organically, and if you have that mental ability to be disciplined and dedicated and not waver when it comes to your values and your kind of ultimate mission or passion or goal in life, you will be, you will find yourself in the position to have a bigger impact on the community. Alhamdulillah, it wasn't easy, but this is something that I will be working on for the next 5 to 10 years, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the past couple of years.
Fouz, thank you so much. This was wonderful. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening to an episode of the Women Power Podcast. And thank you for downloading and streaming our podcast every week. If you love what you've heard, tag us on Instagram and follow the Women Power Podcast and Women Power Summit account for more information on our next episode. Please leave a rating review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps other women discover the show. That's it from me. See you next week.